It was a choice that no one in the Seven Kingdoms had ever imagined. Ned Stark, Lord of Winterfell and Warden of the North, stood before King Robert Baratheon in King's Landing, a man facing certain death for the perceived crime of challenging the Lannisters and their grip on the throne. But then, something unexpected happened. Instead of the executioner's axe, the king offered him a lifeline. "Take the black," Robert suggested, his voice heavy with the weight of years of friendship and the burden of the crown. "Take the black and swear the oath of the Night's Watch, live, and leave the politics of the realm behind. Serve in the North where your honor is more respected than the court of kings." It was an unexpected offer, and one that could have spared Ned Stark's life. But for a man like him, whose sense of honor and duty ran as deep as the roots of Winterfell itself, it wasn't an easy decision. Could he walk away from the North, from his family, to face the cold, desolate life of a member of the Night's Watch? Could he abandon his children and allow the realm to continue to descend into chaos under the Lannisters' rule? In this moment, the fate of the Stark family and the future of the North would be decided by a choice more momentous than any battle. Ned knew his loyalty was first and foremost to his family and the North. But there was also his deep-seated sense of honor that told him to obey the king's command. He thought of his wife, Catelyn, and his children Robb, Sansa, Arya, Bran, and Rickon, and of how they would fare without him. Could he leave them behind to navigate the treacherous politics of the South? Or would the offer to take the black be the only way to guarantee their safety? His mind raced, but ultimately Ned realized that by taking the black, he would avoid the immediate danger of Robert's wrath while still protecting his legacy. So he agreed. He accepted the offer of the Night's Watch. He would live, but it would come at a great cost. His death was postponed, but it would mean an entire shift in the trajectory of his life, and in the future of Westeros, a different fate for the Stark children. The consequences of Ned's decision to take the black would be felt immediately, first and foremost by his children. Robb Stark, already a young leader, would not be thrust into the role of Lord of Winterfell so suddenly, and his trajectory would have been shaped by his father's survival. Robb would have had more time to grow under the tutelage of his father, and his early leadership would have been more tempered and thoughtful, guided by the wisdom that only Ned Stark could impart. Without Ned's death to ignite Robb's rebellion, it's possible the Stark children would have stayed out of the war altogether. Robb's decision to challenge the Lannisters and start a rebellion was driven by grief and anger at his father's execution. In a scenario where Ned survives, he might have counseled his son to avoid rash decisions, and together they could have built a stronger northern defense, securing the North's borders against the growing threats. Sansa's life would have been entirely different as well. With her father alive, Sansa's position in King's Landing would have been far more secure. Instead of being married to Tyrion Lannister and later crushed by the violence of Joffrey's reign, Sansa may have been positioned as a valuable ally to the Lannisters, or even to Stannis Baratheon, had he chosen to take the throne. But her father's survival would have meant a far more cautious, strategic approach to the politics of the South. Arya, ever the rebel, would have had her father's guidance and perhaps even more freedom within Winterfell. Ned's survival might have allowed Arya to pursue her interests in a way that still aligned with her family's honor and duty. Arya's potential for becoming the fierce warrior she was destined to be could have been nurtured by her father, who never had the chance to understand his daughter's true potential. And then there was Jon Snow, Ned's supposed bastard, who had always been left out in the cold. Both literally and figuratively, Jon's life would have been completely different had Ned survived. Jon would have likely grown up alongside his Stark siblings, learning the ways of Winterfell, and perhaps eventually becoming Ned's heir, not out of obligation, but out of a genuine sense of family. In this alternate timeline, Jon Snow's destiny would not have led him to the wall. Instead, Ned would have been there to protect him from the harshness of the world outside Winterfell. Jon's identity would not have been defined by his status as a Stark bastard, but by his legacy as a Stark son. The truth about Jon's true parentage hidden for so many years might have been revealed earlier, reshaping his relationship with his family and changing the trajectory of his involvement in Westeros politics. The North's future in a new light. With Ned Stark's survival, the North would have remained a powerful, independent force in Westeros. While Robert's rebellion resulted in a fragmented realm, the North under Ned Stark's leadership would have been an unyielding pillar of stability. The North was often overlooked and underestimated by the Southerners, but Ned's death had left a significant power vacuum. In this alternate timeline, the Stark name would have been stronger than ever. Ned's position as Warden of the North would have cemented his authority and his family's control over the region. He would have been the counterweight to the Southern powers, particularly the Lannisters, who were on the rise after Robert's death. His authority would have been vital in curbing the Lannisters' growing dominance, and his diplomatic approach would have positioned him as a key figure in the alliances of Westeros. Without Ned's untimely death, the Stark family would have been an undeniable force in the politics of Westeros. Robb Stark, as the eldest son, would have been groomed as his father's heir, and his leadership would have been molded by Ned's wisdom. The North would have remained strong, both in terms of military might and political influence. The threat posed by the growing power of House Lannister would have been mitigated by Ned's cautious strategy and alliances with other houses. Tywin Lannister's aggressive expansion would have been tempered by the Stark family's unyielding defense of the North, and the eventual War of the Five Kings would have had a very different outcome. The Lannisters and the throne. What if Ned Stark had survived? The most obvious consequence would have been the direct challenge to the Lannisters' grip on the throne. While King Robert's reign was shaky at best, the Starks had always represented an alternative to the Lannisters' brand of politics. The death of Ned Stark left a gaping hole in the political fabric of Westeros, which Tywin Lannister seized upon quickly, bringing his children into positions of power and aligning himself with other noble houses. But with Ned still alive, Tywin's influence would have been far more difficult to secure. The Starks had many allies in the North, and Ned's diplomacy would have been vital in maintaining those alliances. Robb's forces, rather than being decimated at the Red Wedding, would have grown stronger under his father's guidance. Together, the Starks and their allies could have mounted a successful challenge against the Lannisters much earlier potentially preventing the power struggle that ultimately led to the deaths of many key figures in his seven kingdoms. Had Ned Stark taken the Black and avoided death, the realm might have been less divided. The Lannisters would have faced a united North, backed by strong leadership from Winterfell, and the chaos that followed Robert's death might have been avoided altogether. Ned Stark's decision to take the Black would have not only saved his life, but could have altered the entire course of Westeros. From his family's fate to the North's role in the wars to come, his survival would have ensured that the Stark name lived on as a powerful force in Westeros. With the Lannisters challenged and the North's future secure, the political landscape of the Seven Kingdoms would have been forever changed by one simple decision. A decision to survive and preserve the Stark legacy, no matter the cost. Had Ned Stark taken the Black and survived the events in King's Landing, the ramifications for his family would have been profound. One of the most significant impacts would have been on Jon Snow, his supposed illegitimate son. In the original timeline, Jon's identity was tied to his status as a Stark bastard. With Ned still alive, Jon's life would have unfolded much differently. Ned's decision to reveal the truth about Jon's parentage could have shaped Jon's future in a way that would have prevented much of the suffering he endured. Instead of growing up under the shadow of being a bastard, Jon would have been acknowledged fully as Ned's son. His place in Winterfell and his role within the Stark family could have been as strong as that of any legitimate child. As Jon grew older, his connection to Winterfell would have meant that he could have eventually taken his place alongside Robb as a leader of the North. The guidance and leadership of his father would have shaped him into a far more capable individual, with the chance to play a pivotal role in the realm's politics. Without the driving need to prove himself, Jon might have avoided the emotional isolation that led him to join the Night's Watch in the first place. Moreover, Jon Snow's interactions with the Lannisters, and especially his relationship with Daenerys Targaryen, would have been dramatically altered. The love story that played out between Jon and Daenerys in the original timeline might have looked completely different, as Jon's identity as a Stark could have made him a more natural ally for the Targaryens in their struggle for the throne. A united Stark-Targaryen front could have shifted the balance of power in Westeros. The War of the Five Kings. With Ned Stark alive, the course of the War of the Five Kings would have shifted significantly. Robb Stark's rebellion against the Lannisters was fueled by the injustice of his father's death. In this alternate timeline, Robb would have never gone to war if his father had still been at Winterfell. Instead of rallying the North against the Lannisters, Robb might have taken a more diplomatic approach under Ned's guidance. Ned Stark, ever the strategist, would have worked tirelessly to secure alliances with key houses across Westeros. He would have been able to avoid the traps that the Lannisters set for Robb, such as the betrayal at the Red Wedding. With his father alive, Robb would have had the wisdom to avoid the rash decisions that led to his downfall. Instead of rushing into battle, Ned's tactical genius could have resulted in a more united front for the North, securing its position as an undeniable force in the realm. The war would have likely seen fewer major battles, rather than a prolonged civil war. Ned Stark's diplomacy could have brokered peace or at least a lasting ceasefire between the major houses. The North would have been a major player, and the Starks would have maintained control over Winterfell without falling prey to the treacherous political games of the South. The Lannisters and the Iron Throne. The Lannisters, under the leadership of Tywin Lannister, would have had to deal with a much more formidable foe in the form of the Stark family. While Tywin Lannister was a master of politics and warfare, he faced one of the few houses that could match his cunning, the Starks. The survival of Ned Stark would have meant that the North remained firmly out of the Lannisters' grasp. Tywin's plans for power in the realm would have been slowed down or even thwarted entirely. The Stark family's alliance with other noble houses, fortified by Ned's wisdom, would have acted as a counterbalance to Tywin's ambitions. A united northern front, strengthened by Ned's leadership, would have been an unshakable force that could potentially turn the tide in the battle for the Iron Throne. Ned's presence could have also influenced the dynamics between the key players vying for the throne, particularly Stannis Baratheon. Instead of his rebellion against the Lannisters being led without guidance, Stannis might have seen Ned Stark as a natural ally, with both men fighting for justice in a land where betrayal and corruption had taken root. Daenerys Targaryen's return. In this alternate timeline, the return of the Targaryens could have been significantly more powerful with the backing of the North. Daenerys Targaryen, with her dragons and claim to the throne, would have found an ally in a strong and unified North. Ned Stark's diplomatic skills could have turned the tides of the rebellion, creating a formidable force that could have challenged the Lannisters much earlier. Jon Snow, revealed as the legitimate son of Ned Stark, might have become a key figure in this united front. His strong ties to both House Stark and the Targaryens would have made him a critical part of the alliance between the two houses. The Targaryen-Stark alliance would have been more strategic and unyielding, creating a new power structure in Westeros that the Lannisters would have had difficulty defeating. The Stark legacy, ultimately, Ned Stark's survival would have ensured that his legacy lived on in a much stronger, more enduring form. His children, raised with his guidance and wisdom, would have been positioned to play significant roles in the political, military, and social upheavals of the realm. Winterfell would have remained a beacon of stability in a fractured world, and the Stark family would have continued to rule the North with dignity and honor. The political power of House Stark would have been unmatched in the North, and the alliance with Daenerys Targaryen would have been a game-changer. The North's unity, guided by Ned Stark's leadership, would have ensured that the region remained free from the political chaos and bloodshed that came to define the War of the Five Kings, a kingdom united under the North. In the end, the question of what might have happened if Ned Stark had taken the Black is one that reshapes the entire history of Westeros. A world where Ned Stark lived would have seen the North emerge as a dominant force in the realm, with the Stark family firmly in control. The political alliances, the military strategy, and the lasting legacy of House Stark would have altered the outcome of the War of the Five Kings, and perhaps even the battle for the Iron Throne itself. The impact of this decision would have been felt throughout Westeros, from the political intrigue of King's Landing to the frozen expanse of the Wall. The choices made by Ned Stark, had he survived, would have been pivotal in the shaping of Westeros' future. A united North, a stronger Stark family, And a realm on the brink of change this was the world that could have existed. If Ned Stark had taken the Black,